Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival. And so today I'm going to talk about 10 characteristics of false flag attacks. There's a channel out there called Truthstream Media that has done a video with that title. And they go through these 10 points that are just ridiculous. And they talk about false flag attacks in general. So I want to try to... I'm going to go through each one of those points. And, you know, the thing is that and I've got some notes here that I'm kind of taking a look at because I wanted to cover each one. And, you know, a lot of these sites out there make a ton of money from what is quite simply amateur analysis. They string together different videos with dark and ominous sounding music. They put together short clips of video and articles from highly questionable sources. And they present their narrative as fact. You know, they repeatedly say things like, "This makes no sense. How could this be? There must be a connection between these two things." And you know, and they try to essentially, you know, subliminally cause doubt in your mind about what is being said about a certain event that has happened. And you know, the thing is that after major crisis has happened, everybody is trying to immediately make sense of what happened and why. And these fearmonger sites understand that if there is a lack of answers being given from official sources, because they're doing the investigation, they're trying to find the truth, they can't just release everything they know right at the beginning, then all they have to do is they have to string together a conspiracy, and many people out there will accept it as fact, because people these days no longer use critical thinking skills. They just don't. They go with what they're presented. If there's no other answer there, somebody else presents something as fact, and they're like, yeah, that's got to be it, and that's it. They don't think about the event. They don't try to, really apply critical thinking to understand, does that really make sense? So anyway, in reality, police and law enforcement officers, of which I'm one, and I've never kept that a secret. That's always been out in the open. I'm a oath keeper, and I believe in the Constitution, and so that's just who I am. But the thing is that they have to keep this information close hold, because they have to ensure the integrity of the information and the investigation. They cannot just release everything they have right out of the beginning, because in real investigations, what ends up happening is you have to sort through fact and fiction. And early on in an investigation, you may think that one thing is fact, and later you find out that it wasn't fact. And so sometimes you have to hold on to that, or almost always you have to hold on to it until you have a certainty, until you know for sure exactly what happened and how it happened. And we can't just keep news outlets and all that kind of stuff up to date and abreast of all that stuff that's happening. And many times these big investigations like this take years and years and years to sort through all the chaff, to actually get down to the very essence of what actually happened and what occurred. So with that, we'll go ahead and start through these 10 points that are covered in this video. So the first thing to say is it's so high profile. These events that take place are so high profile that that's all the media will talk about 24/7. Okay, well, the bottom line is that we live in a safe society. We're safer now than we have been in 40 years. Crime rates are down, and news companies, news agencies profit from ratings when they have more people watching their stories. Anytime something sensational happens, of course that's going to be all they're going to talk about, because they want to reach the widest audience. They want to get as many people watching as they can, because people love to consume information. They're looking for answers. So of course that's what they're going to run with. And the whole concept that a government who perpetrated a false flag attack would trust a bunch of reporters with their secret plans is absurdity. It's complete absurdity. If a government conducts a false flag operation, they want zero in media involvement. They want to maintain operation security. It should be secret for years and years and years to come, and their involvement would never come out if it was successful. That's what they would look for. They don't look for media attention. That's just absurd. Ultimately, if it ever did come to light that false flag attacks had been done, not just plans, but if something had actually been done, then according to all the regulations and policies now, we wouldn't see any of that information until 25 years or so after the last person involved was dead. So, it's just absurd that anybody would believe that there is collusion between intelligence services and the Department of Defense or police or an FBI or whatever and the media. Now, that's not to say that the media doesn't have a liberal agenda and that they want to promote liberal ideas, but that's a whole other thing than bringing them in on a big conspiracy to kill a bunch of American citizens. There's a massive leap between those two things to understand that, yeah, many people who are in the media are liberals, and a lot aren't, but still some are, and that they want to promote liberal ideas, and then to think that all those people that are in the media are going to ignore and accept the killing of what could be, or injuring of, hundreds of people just to get a story. I mean, it's absurdity. So anyway, number 2 is it's a neatly packaged, comprehensive narrative. Okay, that whole premise is absolutely false. When has this ever happened? Well, I mean, media outlets are constantly looking for answers to what happened. They're constantly trying to put together the story, again, because the police haven't released anything yet. There's a lot of differing opinions in the very beginning. We've got the whole concept of the fog of war. A lot of media outlets will publish wrong things, and they have to retract it, and they go with this story because they're trying to get the scoop to beat everybody else. It's just the nature of the business, because whoever gets the break, and gets that first big scoop is going to get more views, they're going to get more notoriety, and, they win their Pulitzer Prizes and all this other kind of stuff. So they're all trying to get out there and put together a story as fast as they can. But ultimately, Occam's razor, I mean, the simplest solution is usually the solution. And so a lot of times that's what people end up going with, because that's usually what it is. So anyway, let's see here. Number 3 is suspects are taken out or they commit suicide. Okay, so this is a true point, but it's an illogical premise that they're trying to put forward. Clearly these acts of people, when they go and they shoot up movie theaters and they shoot up the Las Vegas hotels and or the concert events and all that kind of stuff, these are desperate acts of desperate, evil people who want to inflict as much pain as possible before they kill themselves. They were essentially suicidal before it ever happens, because you have to be in a place where you're really screwed up psychologically to even consider the idea of going out and killing a bunch of people. So, why is it that there's some big conspiracy to think that these people wouldn't want to kill themselves? They're already psychotic. They're already in a completely depressed and emotional state, or they wouldn't be conducting these actions. So it just doesn't make any sense. And, the thing is that, copycat behavior happens precisely because the media glorifies and presents these killers as famous people and all that kind of stuff. In my opinion, what I think we should do is, anytime there is any kind of mass shooter or any of that kind of stuff, we should never show their picture. We should never mention their name. and I'll bet you anything, we would see a dramatic decline in these kinds of events. But they won't do that because they want to sensationalize everything and they want to get those views like we were talking about earlier. So let's see, the next thing here, number 4, is suspects have very little training, but they're able to carry out these grand attacks with high body counts and precision. Again, this is totally false. If you look at all of these events that people are still called, false flag events that have happened in recent shootings and all that kind of stuff, personally, I have always been amazed that there aren't higher body counts. The idea that these people are successful in what they're doing is just not right. Because if these things had happened by trained government agents, as these people put forward, you can guarantee that the body count would be way higher. Way higher. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, and it's not even a true statement to say that these, body counts are unrealistically high. They're actually unrealistically low, and it's amazing that they haven't been higher, if you ask me. Okay, number 5 is training exercises and drills happen in and around these attacks. Okay, that's, again, false. That's not true. This has happened in a few select instances, but it's not the majority. And the thing is that law enforcement and the Department of Defense are constantly training, conducting exercises, all that kind of stuff all over the United States. And that happens all over, in Western world, first world countries and all that kind of stuff as well. And it's done precisely so that they can better handle disaster situations as they occur. I mean, that's what people want. Everything after 9/11, we want people to work together. We want them to train. We want them to, there not be that wall between intel and law enforcement. So what's the result? Well, we've started working together more, and we do a lot of drilling and training and exercises precisely so we can handle these kinds of things. And the other thing is that for those people who work in anti-terrorism fields, which I have done in the past, and the FBI does, the CIA does, all these people, the military, all that kind of stuff, it's their job to say what if. It's their job to do exercises on what if scenarios, because they need to be able to know how they would respond if those things happened. When you work in counterterrorism and anti-terrorism, it's your job to try to put yourself in the shoes of a terrorist and say, what would they do? And if they did that, how would we react? What's our capability to handle those kinds of instances? So it's funny because when you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. People want us to be more responsive and to work together, but yet when we do that, then these conspiracy nuts think, oh, well, they're just doing it to cover up the evil that's really going on. I mean, it's just absurdity. Okay, the next thing, number 6, is people in high places are forewarned about the events before they happened. That's what they say. This is a completely illogical and stupid connection, because if it was all orchestrated by the government, why would anybody have to be warned? I mean, it's just dumb to even say that, I mean, if they were really doing it, then they're not going to have to warn themselves, It's just dumb. The reality is that there are thousands of intelligence reports that are filed every day that talk about different potential kinds of attacks and threats that could happen. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, the vast majority of those things never do happen. They never do happen. And so, people go back after the fact when something finally does actually happen, and they try to piece it together and are like, oh, look, they were warned that this was going to happen. Well, the problem is that those reports that came through were like thousands of other ones. They don't have enough information. They're vague. They don't give specific timing. They don't have any actionable intelligence that would keep anybody from stopping those things from happening. Those reports that do have actionable intelligence do actually end up in stopping attacks. The government has stopped hundreds of attacks from happening all since 9/11. So, it's just funny, but they don't talk about that. Nobody's willing to address the fact that literally hundreds of attacks have been stopped. They're just willing to, put forth this bogus idea that the government is killing these people for their agenda, whatever it may be. So it's just ridiculous. Okay. Yeah, so number 7 is the accused has ties to military intelligence agencies, or the FBI. This is, again, completely false. Just because a person has been previously investigated by an intelligence agency or the FBI does not mean there's ties to those agencies. It just means that those agencies were aware of them, they looked at them, and at the time, there was nothing incriminating that they could be held accountable for. They hadn't got to the point of radicalization yet where they were able to be prosecuted. I mean, so they closed their investigation. The FBI doesn't have, 2 psychics sitting in a milk bath foretelling the future on what's going to happen. I worked with the FBI for 5 years at the JTTF, and probably 80% or more of the cases that we did never have, they just get closed because there wasn't anything there. And, those people may never have even been notified, that because we didn't want to be intrusive, to make them feel bad or think that they've done something wrong or whatever the case may be. If people make allegations, you look into it. If there's nothing there, you close it down. That's what you want to happen. You don't want the government to, just because they investigate you, to be harassing you and to be doing all these, things to you that are intrusive and make your life difficult. Now, if there is something there and it gets to the point where you have to go interview them, you have to do something or whatever the case may be, then that's what it is, because the information suggests that it's a serious threat. So you got to take it seriously. So anyway, it's funny to me how they make ties. There's these ties that are there because somebody was previously investigated. That is not a tie to anything. It doesn't mean that there was any involvement whatsoever. Okay, let's see. Number 8 is mysterious witness deaths. Okay, this is also false. This rarely happens. Except with witnesses who come out against Hillary Clinton. That happens pretty frequently. But the fact is that people die all the time, all over the country. And there are bound to be some coincidences if you have a large enough sampling pool. And these conspiracy nuts literally think that just about every horrible act that has ever happened and made the news is part of these conspiracies. So the sample pool is pretty big. They're going to be able to make some connection somewhere because they think that everything that hits the news is a big conspiracy. So, it's just, again, it's completely ridiculous to think that just because somebody, happens to die that may have been involved in some investigation somewhere, that it was taken out by some government agent or something. It's preposterous. Okay. So, mysterious disappearance of evidence. This was number 9. This is also false. Everything that is involved in a crime scene is not evidence. Evidence is only those things that go to prove or disprove the crime, one or the other. And they only keep the ones that are actually going to make an impact one way or another. It's going to either be exculpatory and it's going to help to show that this didn't happen, or it's going to be damning and it's going to show that this did happen. And they maintain that evidence. They have to maintain that evidence until all of the court trials are done. All of them. So not just the regular court trial, not just the first trial, but all of the appeals and everything as well. So evidence has to be maintained for years and years to come. And usually when it is released, the story is no longer newsworthy. It's no longer of any interest, and so nobody cares about it, and it goes and it gets released and it gets returned to whoever, or it gets disposed of, and there's no fanfare about it, and it doesn't ever make the news. Okay, number 10 is who benefits. You have to follow the money. And this is another false premise that they come up with. The thing is that correlation does not equal causation. Just because somebody is taking advantage of a horrific accident to make money and profit from it doesn't mean that they committed the acts themselves or that they're connected to them. You know, when you look at the history of a lot of these companies that are allegedly connected to these conspiracies, they've been trying to sell these products for years. They spent a lot of money in research and development, and of course, they're going to use this opportunity because they know that when there are crises like this, a lot of money follows those crises. You know, people try to, find ways to protect the public and do things and change policies so that they'll be able to, keep people safer. And it's a good business tactic because it's proven to be successful. I mean, their responsibility is to profit for their shareholders. And so they're doing everything they can in order to do that. So, ultimately, you can find a conspiracy theory for almost every major bad act that has ever happened. And, are we really supposed to believe that there are no evil people in society and that everything that happens is perpetrated by the government? Because that's ultimately what these conspiracy theorists are saying. They're actually saying that when you read between the lines, what they're saying is that as a whole, people don't commit evil acts on their own. And that's absolutely preposterous. People do commit acts of terror and they do bad things on their own. We look at our society, we have a whole ton of people that are living in a distressed emotional state. They're taking drugs to deal with this. They isolate themselves because of the echo chamber that they create in their own social media circles. And there's some pretty sick people out there, unfortunately. Now, listen, just like, on the advertisement or the thing that I put up in the front of the video, I am not saying that you should not have a healthy skepticism of the government. You should. But you should have an equally healthy skepticism for the information that you read and for the type of information that you believe. You need to apply critical thinking skills when you look at any information that's presented, whether it be by the government or whether it be by anybody else. Does it make sense in the context of the world that you live in? All right? And so anyway, the bottom line is that if you sincerely believe that your government is guilty of these kinds of crimes, why do you live here? Why wouldn't you move? Why wouldn't you move to Canada or New Zealand or Australia or someplace else, Because if it's so bad here, why would you continue to stay? I really don't understand that. The bottom line is, ultimately, I don't think that most people actually do believe those things. I think that it's the government is a target. They're a big, easy target, and so people like to blame them as the big bad guy in the sky when they actually don't understand the circumstances or the situation that's happening. It's just an easier answer because people are lazy these days, and when somebody presents an alternative and there's no official sources that have presented anything else, they just go with that alternative. And ultimately what that means is they're weak-minded. And, they need to really actually put critical thinking skills, apply critical thinking skills and try to understand a situation. And when they do that, they're going to find that actually evil does exist and people do commit horrific crimes. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you live in a free society. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. These are just my thoughts on it. I could be wrong. I'm always open to being skeptical about things that happen. I'm not saying that there's no conspiracy theory out there that I buy into. I'm not saying that anytime anybody raises an issue that there's a conspiracy, that they're wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that some of these cases are just patently ridiculous, and you really have to be skeptical. So as always, guys, I definitely appreciate it when you click the thumbs up button, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.